This show is brought to you by Imperial Yeast. You hear us gushing over Imperial Yeast all the time, and that's because their yeast performs for us in every batch we brew. Imperial Yeast is adored by commercial breweries and home brewers alike. Their pitch-right pouches are jam-packed with 200 billion fresh yeast cells, guaranteed to deliver flawless, fast fermentations every time. Imperial Yeast strains are grown by a team of pro brewers and home brewers in Portland, Oregon, who live to help brewers learn more and ferment better. Join our recipe-receiving Patreon groups and get a free upgrade to premium Imperial Yeast with every recipe kit that ships out to you. Learn more at patreon.com/homebrew happy hour and come brew with us.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Hello and welcome to the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you would like us to discuss on a future episode, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the submit a question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing. Today I am joined by the president, chief keg washer, all-around sanitary guy right now, Mr. Todd Burns over there. And below me there, we're joined by a special guest. He is Jonathan Ettlie. Jonathan does specialty chemical solutions at National Chemicals, specifically for beverage dispense systems and brewery sanitation. Jonathan, man, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
You called me the sanitary guy. I think you should call him the sanitary guy.
I just mean you have been so obsessed with cleanliness lately. It's like I don't even know you. You like, who is this guy who is like, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like you've been anti, hygiene or whatever, but lately, I mean, I've had more conversations with you in the last 12 days about like washing hands, like you're my father or something, man. It's getting really old, actually. Calling me, checking out, you sent me a bottle of the QA, which I thank you. It's a wonderful product. We'll get to that. Asking me about using it, how I'm using it, what I'm doing. And then everyone at the office telling me too, you're going in all Mr. Sanitary with the face mask on. And I think people know you're taking it serious, Todd. Thanks for that.
Well, yeah, I think it's important right now. We've got a serious situation out there, as we all know, and we're trying to take it serious, keep our employees safe, and keep our customers safe. So I think it's very important right now. And I think we couldn't possibly have a better guest than who we have today, because you talked about the QA earlier, and that's one of your products that I guess, Jonathan, y'all have had this product a long time, but it's very timely because it does kill the coronavirus, right?
Yeah, that is correct. And I actually dug through the public-facing EPA registration documents for the sanitizer product. Our QA concentrate solution disinfectant and sanitizer was registered with the federal EPA in March of 1972.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So we've been making this product for nearly 50 years.
Wow, that's neat. And we'll definitely talk more about that product. The first thing I wanted to ask you about, though, Josh and I have both talked to you and met you before at HomebrewCon. Mm-hmm. And I know you've been a brewer for a while, but tell us a little bit about your brewing experience and kind of, what you like to brew.
Oh, sure. I'd love to. I've been brewing for, 2020 now? I think I started brewing somewhere between 20 and 21 years ago. So at the turn of the new millennium, and somewhere between 99 and 2000, somewhere in that range. When I got out of college, I ended up going to culinary school and not really using my college degree for what it was officially for. And when I was in culinary school, I connected with some old friends that I grew up with that were working for Northern Brewer in St. Paul. And this was back when they just had the one little tiny store on Grand Avenue. And I learned to brew in the parking lot behind that shop with some friends of mine that worked for that place. Took my homebrew kit home, and it just took off. And there's no better place to bring fresh, cold beer than a hot kitchen. I was cooking as a line cook for a living, working in gourmet restaurants, and I'd bring in bottles of my fresh homebrew. My first batch I ever made was German Hefeweizen. It was actually the first real beer I tried when I was traveling abroad in Germany. It's one of my favorite styles to brew continuously is a German Hefeweizen. I'm generally a fan of malt-forward beers. I like beers like Hefeweizen. I like English nut browns. I like porters. I like classic amber ales. I'm more of a traditionalist, I guess you would say. I don't get into hazy New England IPAs, juicy beers, glitter beers, milkshake IPAs.
Whoa! No glitter beers. Wait a second. I got to stop this podcast right now.
Sorry.
I wish James is on the show now. This guy is one of us.
Yeah.
He's one of, especially one of you and James.
James is listening to the show going, my man. That's what he's
Yeah, one of these days we'll have to get you to Texas and brew with you because we love brewing all those types of styles as well. So that's really interesting.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, good. So you've brewed a long time. How did you end up at National Chemical?
I connected in with National Chemicals. I was in between jobs and still actively a homebrewer. And it was forwarded a job listing by a contact of mine to work as the original job title I got hired into National Chemicals with was a brewing ambassador. This was about 6 years ago, so in 2014, and you may recall that that time was pretty solid for the homebrew industry. It was in a pretty good growth track, and National Chemicals was actively seeking someone to manage their brewery sanitation products for craft and in particular homebrewing. And that product line includes the Craftmeister products for cleaning, BTF Iodophor for sanitizing, and then also BLC for cleaning beverage systems. So I was hired in to manage that product line for National Chemicals.
And the QA we talked about before, it's also used in the bar, but more as a disinfectant sanitizer for countertops, that sort of thing. Can you tell us just maybe a little bit about the history of the? First of all, what does QA stand for, and what is the history of that product?
Well, the Q and the A stands for quaternary ammonia. It's known as QA for short. A lot of people call it quat or quat-based products. Quaternary ammonia products are incredibly versatile, very safe, and highly effective. The quat-based products are actually detergent and cleaning products. It's an outstanding cleaner that also happens to have tremendous antimicrobial and disinfecting sanitizing properties. Quat-based products are used widely throughout the hospitality industry, healthcare, food processing. When you used to be able to go to restaurants or bars and sit and have a pint, I know that's kind of on hold right now. Anytime a table was changed in between people sitting there, that spray or that wipe down that happened on the table while you're sitting there or before you got there is probably a quat-based product. They're tremendous for sanitizing and disinfecting based on the usage rate. Hard, non-porous surfaces like glass, metal, plastic, stainless steel, tile, porcelain, that sort of thing. They're widely used in those applications, but like any kind of sanitizer and disinfectant product, some products are good at certain things and better at other things, not so good at some things and really not so good at other applications. So the reason why the quat product is kind of new for the homebrew and brewing industry, and at least in terms of how I've been talking about it, is that a lot of times you may have experienced this if you've gone out for a drink at a bar and they pour you a beer and the beer looks flat and it's poured all the way to the top of the glass. There's no head on it.
Yeah, one of our pet peeves.
Yeah, it's an improper beer service, and sometimes that may be indicative of using quat-based sanitizers in the third sink for beer glassware. One thing that makes quat a great hard surface disinfectant sanitizer is after it dries, it does leave behind a residual film with long-lasting antimicrobial properties. That's why it's excellent for fighting off this virus and other viruses on hard surfaces. but that makes it terrible for beer glassware and other fermentation for equipment, because that film can get tracked into your beverage and it basically destroys beer foam. And it wouldn't be really harmful to drink. It wouldn't be very pleasant. But for people that are interested in proper beer service and maximizing profitability out of a draft system, quat sanitizers are not really recommended for that specific application in beer glassware.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. And I actually noticed on the label that they do talk about glassware, but that's not beer glassware. It's for other things, I guess, as far as sanitizing, right? So
yeah. I mean, if you were a restaurant and you were hand washing dishes and that kind of thing, cutting boards, food contact surfaces that go through a traditional hand washing, you can sanitize, food contact dishes and that sort of thing with QA in a third sink, absolutely. And that kind of application is great. It's just not great for beer glassware.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, since we're on sanitizer, do you mind if we talk more about sanitizer?
Absolutely.
Your one of your products that's been out for a very long time is the BTF, and then we have sold some other products in the past, and I've noticed the ones that we've sold in the past have been primarily acid-based sanitizers. This is not an acid-based sanitizer. Can you tell us a little about why would you would use that and what the benefits are?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, BTF Iodophor has been a sanitizer in the market. It also goes back to, I believe the registration occurred in more the later half of the 70s. So it's been around for quite some time. The BTF, what those letters actually stand for, is bartender's friend.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, the Iodophor was actually designed as a third sink sanitizer specifically for beverage service, for beer and wine glassware. Because it was highly effective in cold water, hard water tolerant, and it drips free and dries without any residual film left behind, no odor left behind, and it was excellent for beer glassware service. Now, in the state of homebrewing in the late 70s and early 80s, you got to go back and dust off your original copy of Charlie Papazian's books. The sanitizer of choice in the early days of homebrewing was bleach.
Mm-hmm.
Bleach is a chlorine-based sanitizer. Chlorine and iodine are both in the same kind of line in the periodic table called halogens. Iodine and chlorine have a lot in common in the way they kill things and their versatility. But bleach, not really a favored sanitizer for homebrewing other applications right now, because it's got a tremendous odor to it, needs to be rinsed quite a bit. Along comes Iodophor with the same level of effectiveness, but a lot better feature set. And it started getting back-ended into the homebrewing industry in approximately the early 80s. There was one store in particular that's still around and doing well, is the beverage people in Santa Rosa, California. The late Byron Birch was a huge proponent of BTF Iodophor and really kind of put it on the map for homebrew sanitizing. And all this predates 5-Star Chemical and their options with acid sanitizers. In kind of the recent boom in homebrewing, 5-Star launched their sanitizer StarSan, which is a different class of sanitizer altogether, called an anionic acid-based sanitizer. And I should probably backtrack a little bit, and I think it's useful to describe to people what a sanitizer is and how you can call a sanitizer a sanitizer. When you have a product that you want to call a sanitizer or an antimicrobial type product, you need to register your product with the federal EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. They manage the data that is required to call yourself a sanitizer. And to be called a sanitizer, you have to kill 2 baseline bacterial cell cultures to 99.9% in 5 minutes or less. If you can meet those requirements and you can pay a hefty amount of bills to the federal and state level governments, you can have a sanitizer product. And that's typically why sanitizer products are a little more pricey than just cleaning products. It's expensive to maintain an antimicrobial line. And so BTF Iodophor is a sanitizer product. StarSan is technically a sanitizer product. QA is a sanitizer product. Bleach is a sanitizer product. Why would you use other ones versus other ones? BTF Iodophor has got a wide range of kill capabilities in all types of microorganisms. It kills viruses, it kills gram-negative and positive bacteria such as E. coli and staph, and important for homebrewers, acetobacter. That makes vinegar, commonly transmitted by fruit flies. Iodine wipes that stuff out. Iodine kills yeast, which is very important for homebrewing, I think. Iodine kills bloodborne pathogens, maybe not so important for homebrewers. But if you compare that versus the feature set of Starsan, like I said, Starsan, its only known capabilities is to kill these two types of bacteria, which aren't necessarily relevant for brewing applications. Starsan is easy to use. It's odorless. It foams like crazy. I think the biggest drawback to Starsan, you trade off the ease of use sometimes for effectiveness. Starsan is not widely effective at killing yeast, in particular yeast, wild yeast. And I think that's a critical sanitizing application for homebrewing. You can be very assured that BTF Iodophor is going to wipe out any residual or wild yeast cultures in your gear in between brewing batches. And that's the biggest number one I always recommend to people about why they choose a sanitizer that they choose.
Yeah, my dad, we've used a bunch of, I mean, I'm privileged to be in the position I am as a home brewer working for Todd with Cat Connection. BTF Iodophor is literally his favorite one that we've used. I think it has to do with the ease of use. And yeah, the odorless part of it. He loves that, but it's super easy to use, right? I think that's what, I think that's his thing. Whenever I told him I was doing the interview, he was like, whoa, you're going to bring some home? I was like, Dad, we have some. Yeah, Jonathan, do a shout out to my dad. That's the kind of dork he is. But no, I think.
Hey, Dad, good job.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he loves the stuff. We, I've seen the products being used and sold over the years. I didn't realize how old is the wrong word, but how the history of the product, how far back you go. That's real interesting to me. That especially that boom of homebrewing in the 80s. Are you seeing it right now? People being more like aware of the need of sanitation. Homebrewers, I would argue, are probably have always been on the hygienic side, but are you seeing a boost of y'all's products going out the door more because of everything going on?
And we certainly are. I've seen a lot of people, I mean, in general, homebrewers are coming back to the hobby because they're kind of being forced to be stuck at home right now. And I also agree with you that homebrewers in general are probably a little more advanced and pay attention to cleaning and sanitizing in general. And they kind of learn that from the hobby. And I think that's really an advantage for people in the current situation with this pandemic that's out there right now. In the last 30 to 45 days, we have seen a spike in demand for our BTF Iodophor, whether that's entirely because of a lot of people getting back to brewing or maybe going to the homebrew store as a known source of antimicrobial and sanitizing products. When a lot of pieces are getting sold out because of panic shopping right now. The last couple of months, it's been hard to find household cleaning products like Lysol in particular. Our Quat or QA product is actually a solid replacement for Lysol with a similar active ingredient, except with one of our 32-ounce bottles, you can make 40 gallons of disinfectant as opposed to that one ready-to-use spray bottle. So that's a huge value for people on the QA product. But, iodine, like I said, I mean, we kind of have to be careful. The BTF Iodophor does kill viruses, but we have no known capability to be able to kill this new coronavirus that's out there with the BTF Iodophor. There's a lot more research on the Quat product that says that that's a capability with the Quat.
I find it's really funny to me, some of the things you just said, because I already knew some of those things because my dad told me on the car ride yesterday. I had to actually take him back to the hospital. He's having some heart issues that we're working on. But anyway, he was like, "Oh yeah, that new product that you brought out, the QA, it's pretty much the same as the Lysol wipes and disinfectant." He goes, "Now that's not easy to find out, but I got their data sheet off the internet and looked at it. It's so funny. He's a chemical engineer, so you know the type, right?" But he did say that I bet you do. He did say that it was a very similar product. So I thought that was neat. One of the other comments I would make that I really like about the BTF, I have a unique situation. Well, I shouldn't say unique. I'm sure a lot of people share this. I have extremely hard well water here. And my understanding is it's unlike some of the sanitizers out there, it is very effective still in the hard water.
Yeah, that's correct. We developed BTF Iodophor and also the QA sanitizer in Winona, Minnesota, which is right on the border between Minnesota and Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge hard water area because of all the chalk, all the limestone cliffs and rocks surrounding the Mississippi River. So the water is incredibly hard. A lot of people kind of make a correlation between hard water and the pH of the water. Those are two different concepts. You can have really hard water in terms of grains of hardness, which is usually measured in the bicarb content in your water or other mineral content. Because iodophor is not an acid-based sanitizer, hard water isn't a problem interacting with some of the compounds in the BTF iodophor delivery mechanism. The one thing that can impact it, and this is pretty rare, we've ran into one situation in about 40 years where we had a local municipal water supply in, I think it was rural Indiana, where the water coming out of the tap was a 9+ on the pH scale.
Wow.
It was so on the alkaline side. Typically, tap water should be about a 7 pH. Yeah. This was over 9. So it was actually a very alkaline pH situation. In those kinds of situations, iodophor can struggle because it is technically acid on the pH scale. It doesn't require the acid to be effective, but if you have a really high alkaline pH situation, it can denature some of the iodophor delivery mechanism. So that's something to pay attention to. But in terms of grains of hardness, iodophor is very friendly in hard water or soft water.
That's great. Well, I think it's interesting, but there's so many sanitizers and it's so confusing. And this helped a lot to be able to talk about some of the different types of sanitizers and what the differences are. The next thing can be confusing to all of us, I think, are cleaners. There's a lot of different types of cleaners out there in the market, and the two that I see the most are, an oxidizing type and the alkaline type. But there may be more than that. Can you kind of elaborate or explain some of the cleaning products that you have?
Sure. Any useful brewery cleaner is going to have some sort of alkaline pH for a number of reasons, especially on the homebrew level. There are some acid cleaners out there, but they're typically reserved for professional for a number of reasons. So homebrew cleaning is usually done with a variety of high alkaline pH, but generally safe, non-caustic products. You and I talked about this earlier this morning. There is a difference between, you can have a really high alkaline pH of 11+ on the pH scale, and that product can still be considered non-caustic. Caustic means that the chemical makeup is so energetic that it causes skin and tissue damage. So you can have a high alkaline cleaner like our Craftmeister Alkaline Brewery Wash that gets a really high alkaline pH in solution, but you can stick your bare hands right into it. It won't melt your skin off. I always think of that scene in Fight Club where he gets the really nasty chemical burn on the back of his hand. That's caustic. The most common brewery cleaners that I run into are, 5-star PBW. That's a high alkaline non-caustic cleaner powder. Be Bright from BSG, One Step. A lot of people use OxyClean Versatile, which is a whole other discussion altogether that I don't want to get into, using laundry soap for cleaning brewing equipment. But people do it. And then we make our line of products called Craftmeister. That's on my sweatshirt right here. Craftmeister is our cleaning lineup that has a couple of different offerings. And you mentioned oxidizers. One of the common components across all these products is a chemical called sodium percarbonate. Sodium percarbonate is the OxyClean chemical. That's the stuff where you put it in solution and it fizzes up. It's basically a dry format hydrogen peroxide. So when it hits the solution, it makes that all effervescent oxygen, which has a number of benefits. That makes it great for cleaning power and bleaching away stains and odors. It does come with some drawbacks, though, if you don't treat it properly. Percarbonate-based cleaners, which are the most common ones, you need to use them in very hot water generally to get them to dissolve and activate properly. A lot of times these oxidizer agents, the percarb, can, if not mixed with a proper chemical backbone, after they're used, especially in hard water, can leave a white chalky film on the inside of your beer. You may have seen that in your hard water situation. That's really, really why I like our alkaline brewery wash, because it does not feature that oxygen release chemistry. It makes it really versatile. It makes it really friendly in hard water. It makes it really friendly in soft water. It also means you can use it in hot water and cold water, which is tremendous application. So there's a lot of common threads throughout those cleaners. Sodium percarbonate is one common base. Soda ash, which is sodium carbonate, is very common. Sodium metasilicate is one of the most common agents in these brewery cleaners. Just about all the products we've discussed in the last couple of minutes feature some or all of those items. And they're really the workhorses of the non-caustic alkaline cleaning.
I know one of the things you mentioned to me, I thought that was very interesting. I'd never realized this before, but on some of these oxygen-based cleaners, they do, unlike the alkaline cleaner, they do lose their effectiveness over time. Like if you leave it overnight, because they stop producing the chemical, I guess, right?
Yeah, basically what happens is, let's say your cleaner is 25% by weight, just throwing a number out there, 25% by weight, the sodium percarbonate. After you get it in there and you dissolve it and it foams up, and then that foam all dies down, and that portion of your cleaning powder is essentially shot. It's done. But all these other cleaners have other agents built into them that are other alkaline cleaning agents like the metasilicate and the soda ash that still linger and do the job. But that's another reason why I like the alkaline brewery wash is you mix it up, you can come back to it in 24 hours. And if you didn't do anything with it, it's basically 100% the same. It won't change over time, basically, once you get it in solution. It's 100% active until you start loading up at 30 degrees and stuff. So that makes it great for overnight, like kind of set it and forget it style cleaning, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can't wait to try it. I've actually have not used it before, but the fact that you can use it with cold water is a real benefit to me, or even,
it's huge.
Cool water, especially in the summer here, it's kind of warm coming out of the tap, but it'll be nice to be able to not have to heat water up to be able to clean. So
absolutely, yes. Yeah, it gives it a huge versatility edge over any other cleaning product out there. A lot of people have pre-bought or DIY'd keg washers that may or may not feature a heating element in them. I don't know. Do you guys sell the Mark's keg washer?
We do, yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I've talked to Mark, the guy that made that. He's like, you have any idea how many units I've replaced on a warranty from people adding heating elements in that thing just to get PBW to dissolve and stay active in that? He's like, wow. You would not believe it. I'm like, you should try my alkaline brewery wash. He's like, this is great. I can start and finish in cold water with this, and it's completely effective. It works just the same. And so it's great in those kind of recirculating keg washing applications for that type of reason.
Well, speaking of recirculating, I guess, how much time do we have left, Josh, on this podcast?
Man, the world is your oyster.
Because we're going to talk about my favorite subject now, beer line cleaning.
Oh, no.
Right?
Nice.
So my understanding, you've got quite a few products for cleaning beer lines, and I'd like, do you mind kind of going over how you clean your beer lines and what products you prefer, and kind of give us some insight on that? I'm anxious to learn new ways to clean my beer lines. So
sure. I mean, I'd love to talk about that. I mean, beer line cleaning, I think, is a little underrated in the homebrew world. I mean, it is critical in the commercial world. Absolutely critical.
Can I interrupt you? There's people that aren't watching the video, but Josh, his head just went down and his hand went over his head. And it was very impressive.
As much as James would love to talk with you about being a traditionalist of beer, Todd is in heaven right now with you in beer line. Todd, but I'll let you continue, and Todd will geek out. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with a little background. You guys have been a partner of ours for our BLC beverage system cleaner for quite some time, and I appreciate that. We've going back even earlier than QA, which was registered in 1972 at the EPA. Dr. Charles Lamon, or Chuck as we call him affectionately around here, worked with the big breweries at the time I believe starting in 1962 or 1964 to develop a more ready to use, consistent, over the like liquid caustic line cleaner that we just take for granted these days. Prior to the mid 60s and us developing BLC with Anheuser-Busch, when it was still Anheuser-Busch and Coors, when it was still just Coors, before a lot of the changes started happening. A lot of beer line cleaning was done with the individual line cleaner or account or retailer taking dry caustic flake or TSP or both and dissolving them in water, which is a pretty dangerous physical heat generating chemical reaction to make a beer line cleaning solution. So Dr. Landman worked with Anheuser-Busch and Coors to make a prepackaged concentrated liquid caustic line cleaner that you could dilute in water, and that became BLC, which launched for sale in 1967. It was the industry's first brewery-approved liquid caustic line cleaner. And so that kind of started the line cleaning chemical industry. No, a number of advances have happened since then. Beers have gotten more advanced. Beverage systems have gotten more advanced. I believe starting in either the 80s or 90s, we developed a series of more heavy-duty commercial line cleaning chemicals called DAC for double alkaline cleaner. It features both sodium and potassium hydroxide in the same bottle. And also a product called Penetrate, which has a number of high-grade surfactants, which makes it great for cleaning long-draw glycol jacketed systems. And in the 90s, when craft and import beers started becoming a little more prevalent, started dropping a lot more beer stone into beverage systems, we developed an acid cleaner for cleaning beverage systems, also our ALC, which you guys happen to carry as well. And that ended up being a go-to solution for regular maintenance of removing beer stone and minerals out of beverage systems. So that's kind of the background of our lineup of beverage system cleaning chemicals. The most common product that we'll find in the homebrew world for cleaning, your kegerators and jockey boxes, the homemade draft systems is generally our BLC. We have another product that's very useful for cleaning home draft systems called Super No Rinse, which is a powdered-based dry format product that you can make a solution of and run into your lines. So the way I clean my lines in the commercial world, industry best practice is that you should clean your beer lines every 14 days or twice a month. And it usually works out to be about every 14 days. A lot of homebrewers may or may not be doing it that rigorously. I think a good rule of thumb for homebrewers is that you should clean beer lines in between changing kegs. Let's say you've got a couple of lines in a kegerator box, and you're moving a stout and then putting an IPA on the same line. I think it's a good idea to clean that or all your lines whenever you're changing a keg around. Usually the way I clean my beer lines in my own system at home is to take an empty or spare keg. Maybe it's the keg from the batch you just kicked. You make a solution of beer line cleaning solution in that empty keg. Hook it up to a small amount of pressure. You can just pour it into every line. So basically run down the line and put the liquid out on all the beer lines, pour a cleaning solution into all the lines, let it sit and soak in there for anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, up to an hour, and then run back through, especially if you're using the BLC, it's critical that you rinse with lots and lots and lots of water because you want to completely flush that dangerous caustic solution out of the beer lines. You flush with lots and lots of water, and then you're basically, once you're all rinsed out, you can hook fresh beer back up and you should have nice clean beer lines. I think that's a pretty solid approach for homebrewers. There's a number of different steps that happen with commercial beer line cleaning that I'm happy to get into, but it may not be the best use of our time right now. I think for homebrewers, that's a great option. Our Super No Rinse, I think, is really cool because just like in the product game, you don't necessarily have to rinse it. You can make the solution, you can pack it into your lines. It's got a slight blue tint to it, so you know it's in the lines. After it's soaked for 30 minutes, roughly, give or take, there's no need to do a water rinse. You can just hook the beer lines back up and pour fresh beer through the lines until all the dye is gone, basically, and you're pouring regular beer. And so that's an advantage because it can save you time. It's also non-caustic and a lot safer to use.
Jonathan, I noticed you didn't say anything about waiting until you see stuff growing in the beer lines. I didn't know if
If that's what you're waiting for.
Yeah, I don't. He said 14 days, not 14 months, Josh.
I know the look. I did not have it on multi-view whenever he said that, because your face, I saw you looking at me to your side monitor where I'm obviously at on your screen, and you had that like gotcha grin that you always do. Todd does it every 2 weeks is when he cleans out his beer lines. The beer lines that have had beer on them, right? Because he has. Mm-hmm. How many taps do you have right now at the barn, Todd?
Right now, I have 4 active. Right, 4 that actually have beer on them right now.
Yeah,
that's good.
And every 2 weeks, he is faithful to take even the faucets, right? Aren't you doing the faucets too, or do you know?
I always take the faucets off, disassemble them, and then I use something that's more similar to your no rinse, and I'll just drop the faucets in the bucket that I just poured the solution into as I was running them through the lines, and then I leave the faucets off with the cleaners in the lines, and then just leave it for like an hour, do something else, and then I'll flush it out after that.
Yeah, and that's a feature of good commercial beer line cleaning operation, is that they will disassemble, soak clean, scrub, and reassemble the faucets at every cleaning cycle. I think that's a great best practice to be on, whether you're a home draft system or a commercial draft system. Absolutely.
And Jonathan, do you? Oh, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, I was done. Go ahead.
Okay, no, I was just going to ask if there was a point, if like obviously we on the show and to customers at the retail level, we stress the sanitation part, because nothing's worse than, having a smooth brew day, which they don't hardly happen for me. But when you have a smooth brew day and then the fermentation happens and then you bottle or keg the beer and then it's just not good. Like, is there anything you could stress to our listeners about the importance of sanitation and cleanliness at every level of the brewing process?
Oh, absolutely. Cleaning and sanitizing is probably the least favorite part for most homebrewers, but it's likely the most critical part for a number of reasons. At the initial start of your brew I like to delineate the brewing between the hot side and the cold side. The hot side is your brew day. That's when you're doing your mash, steep, boil, chill, that sort of thing. That's your hot side, the production of your wort. Cold side is everything that happens after brew day, basically your fermentation, your serving, your packaging, etc. That's the cold side of brewing. So sanitation becomes really critical basically when you're transitioning from the hot side to the cold side. Pre-fermentation, when you're going through the boil and everything, you don't have to sanitize your mash tun. You don't have to sanitize your brew kettle. Those are going to be sanitized by the heat and the boil of the brewing process. Where sanitation starts becoming critical is when you start chilling the wort down from boil to pitch temperature. So anything that touches that wort prior to fermentation needs to be properly cleaned and sanitized. Sanitizing is not you can't sanitize something that's dirty. And so there's the 3-step rule. You clean with a good detergent. You rinse away all that dirt and debris and cleaner. That's the rinse part. And then you apply a no-rinse sanitizer. That would be something like BTF Iodophor. Always follow the proper measurement and usage instructions on the package. So, for instance, right after you're done chilling your wort, whether that's with an immersion chiller or a plate chiller or a counterflow, or putting it in a snowbank or an ice bath, the immediate stuff you need to have sanitized are your fermenter, any airlocks, any hydrometers that happen to touch that wort. And the reason being is, before you allow fermentation to take off, other things can love to live and grow in that wort. It's wonderfully nutritious for a number of other microorganisms besides the yeast. And so what you're trying to do as a brewer is isolate and maximize that yeast culture that you want to ferment with. You don't want to have stuff like Acetobacter floating around in there, or other types of wild yeast that you don't want to have in your fermentation. And that gets me back to my comparison point between iodine and Star San, is I really trust BTF Iodophor to completely kill all the yeast inside that fermenter, my yeast starter, anything, because yeast is just around in the air anywhere, basically. It's transmitted in the air by dust and everything. And I want to make sure that I'm really, really killing all that wild yeast that's in it. One of the most common off flavors for nasty infected beer is a wild yeast infection. Some common signs of wild yeast off flavors are nasty phenols that can be spicy, Band-Aidy, rubbery, those kinds of flavors. Some people get those in batch after batch after batch. And that may be a failure in sanitation from some small part, or something that touched that wort before it started fermenting or after it started fermenting. And that's really, I think, the biggest reason why you need to clean and sanitize everything properly is it really maximizes your chances to get the beer you really intend. It makes your brewery more consistent. On the business side of things, it keeps customers coming back because when people start making bad beer, they tend to stop brewing. And you want them to make good beer. People want to make good beer for their efforts. And I think one of the best ways you do that is by controlling your cleaning and sanitizing.
Yeah, I agree. Todd, anything to add?
Yeah, I actually think that all of this is very, very informative. We really appreciate you being on the show. It's, I think I've learned more today on this podcast than I've learned on several that Josh has done in the past. So I think we did a really, I think it's a nice podcast.
Well, I appreciate you having me here. I'll be sure to transmit my contact info that any of your listeners that want to shoot me additional questions after the show, I'll make myself available. We have a general email line that I'll receive any questions or comments that come on in. I'd be happy to make myself widely available to anyone that has any questions about this stuff.
And Jonathan, I don't want to put you Johnny on the spot, no pun intended, because your name is Jonathan. That was so lame. I'm so sorry. As it was coming out, I was cringing in my head. We do a live Q&A, and it might be too late for you because it's already the 14th of April. My April one had to bail on me because of all the we're in a pandemic, so I'm not holding people to it, but we do a live video Q&A where people submit it ahead of time, and then whoever attends it live also asks questions. Maybe we could have you on sometime to do the live Q&A to cover anything we missed. And our audience is very engaged. That's what I love the most about people. Homebrewers, for the most part, are very engaged people who are always wanting to learn more and have, like you said, people want to brew not just beer, they want to brew good beer, and they want to brew it consistently. And I think cleaning and sanitizing is an area that you can't overdo for your brew day. Like I as a brewer who only follows recipes that I get from Keg Connection that they are making, Todd and James and Joe, if I do anything, really, it's just focus on the sanitation part, because otherwise I'm just following directions the rest of the day on the recipe kit. And my brew day would end up real bad if I follow those instructions, but my equipment, was cleaned. So I do appreciate your time as well. And Todd,
I think that's a great idea, Josh. Jonathan, I hate to put you on the spot, but we'll talk to you about it later. And maybe if we could do that, because I was joking earlier about being extremely informed on this show. The Q&As to me are the most informative thing we do. It's we get an expert on that knows something about their subject matter, and people ask great questions. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
I'd be more than happy to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Stick around, and we'll talk right after we record this. But yes, Jonathan, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. We really appreciate your time and doing this and answering our questions.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I want to thank Todd and the rest of your staff for being a great partner of ours at National Chemicals here. Our retail partners make us happen, basically. And so we appreciate you guys and all you do for us, too.
Man,
thank you very much. You've been a wonderful person to work with, particularly in these last few weeks while we've been going through this pandemic. So thanks again for all your help.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
All right, we'll talk later. And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the submit a question link at the top of the page. Or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. Thank you to our show sponsor, Imperial Yeast, for supporting us and the home brewing community. Join any top tier of our Patreon community and you'll get free premium liquid Imperial Yeast shipped out to you with your Patreon recipe kit. Get more information at patreon.com/homebrew happy hour. On behalf of Todd Burns, the absent James Carlson, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thank you for listening.
This program is made possible by the checkbook of Mr. Todd Burns and by contributions to our newly launched Patreon by viewers like you. Visit patreon.com/homebrew happy hour and join our community. Thank you.